Good morning, everyone. Uh, First of all, I take this opportunity to welcome Daphne Madam, uh, co-founder and chairperson of management of Mahatma Education Society and founder of St. Optimist International Bombay Chembur. Daphne Madam, we are glad you are here with us to motivate us. Thank you so much for coming over here. Now, to begin with, I request Harsh Shukla sir to, to play the university song. Shukla sir, I request all the participants to put their videos and audios off. I will for the
इदं सुन्दरं मन्दिरं शारदाया मुम्बापुरी विश्वविद्यालयम् इदं सुन्दरं मन्दिरं शारदाया मुम्बापुरी विश्वविद्यालयम् कलाशास्त्रवाणिज्यशाखा विरूढा अमूढा विमुक्ता विहङ्गा वयम् शृण्वन्तु सर्वे दृढं
Thank you, Shukla sir. It is said that gender equality does not mean to compete with men community and doing things what a man can do. But gender equality comes when men and women are doing things what they wish, they able to do. Good morning, everyone. I, Assistant Professor Dr. Anaya Aditya Markandeya, welcome you all for a national level panel discussion on gender equality in job opportunities and leadership roles, the Indian scenario. As we all know, in India during pre-independence period, the status of women was in a deprived state. In the male dominating society, women were refrained from various things like education, employment opportunities. Women were not given their rights. Sati, child marriage, problems of widows were the serious issues faced by the women. Reformers, social activists like Mahatma Jyotiba Phule, along with his wife Savitribai Phule, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Pandita Ramabai Maharshi Karve played a significant role in betterment and upliftment of women in India. This legacy till now has been continued by great social activists like Mrs. Jyoti Mapsekar Madam and Dr. Armida Fernandez Madam, panelists for today's discussion. मुलगी झाली हो असे शब्द कानावर पडताच डोळ्यासमोर येतात त्या स्त्रीमुक्ती संघटनेच्या संस्थापक ज्योती म्हापसेकर मॅडम. ज्या प्रकारे संत ज्ञानेश्वरांनी भगवद्गीतेचे सर्वसामान्यांसाठी ज्ञानेश्वरीच्या रूपात निरूपण केले, त्याचप्रमाणे ज्योती मॅडमनी छोटी छोटी गाणी, पद्यरचना, नाटुकली यांचा वापर करून गावागावातील आदिवासी पाड्यातील महिलांच्या जीवनात परिवर्तन केले. Dr. Armida Fernandez Madam, whose relentless efforts and research are always centered around the survival of babies in country with low cost resources. Madam, with establishment of Sneha, Society for National Education and Health Action, is committed to mother and newborn health nutrition, empowerment, health of adolescents, and prevention of violence against women and children. Gender equality, gender sensitization have been an important issue in our country since almost last 100 years. Today, we, the team Mahatma Nightagiri College of Arts and Commerce and Seroptimist Welfare Association are grateful to our panelists for accepting our invitation. We are looking forward to hear from both of you your views, thoughts on gender equality in job opportunities and roles, the Indian scenario. Welcome, Mapsik Madam and Armida Madam. Now, I would request Padma Madam to address the gathering.
Thank you, Anaya. A very good morning to
Principal
one and all.
Dr.
Am I audible? Anaya, madam, am I audible?
Yes, madam. Yes, you're audible.
I wish everybody a very good morning. Gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all for the national level panel discussion on gender equality in job opportunities and leadership roles, the Indian scenario, organized by Mahatma Education Society's Mahatma Nightagiri College of Arts and Commerce, Chembur, Seroptimist Welfare Association, SIBC. It is indeed our proud privilege to have amidst us today Dr. Daphne Pillai, co-founder of Mahatma Education Society, Pillai Group of Institutions, and Chairperson Management Board of Mahatma Education Society. She is also the founder president of Seroptimist International of Bombay, Chembur. Madam, we are delighted to have you with us today. Dr. Armida Fernandez, a doctor by profession, specialized in the area of neonatology. Her research and contribution centered around the survival of newborn babies in the country. Madam is also the founder trustee of the NGO Sneha since 1999, which is committed to the cause of the health of mothers and newborn children. We also have with us today Madam Jyoti Mapsekar, an active member of Women's Movement of India since 1975. She is the founder member of Stri Mukti Sangatana, a women's liberation organization, and presently holds the position of president of the organization. Also welcome Ms. Yvette Lee, counselor and professional social worker, the president of Seroptimus International Bombay Chembur, a chartered club of professional working women founded in the year 1995 with a vision to bring about a positive change in the lives of women and girls through education, empowerment, and development of skills and abilities. A very warm welcome to all our eminent panelists. The panel discussion will be moderated by Associate Professor Dr. Lata Krishnan, Head, Department of Commerce at Mahatma Knight Degree College of Arts and Commerce. Dr. Lata Krishnan is the immediate past president of National Association of Seroptimus International of India. She served as the NASI president for the period 2016-18. Today's national level panel discussion is the brainchild of the Women Development Cell of Mahatma Knight Degree College of Arts and Commerce. Knight Degree College caters to students who belong to the marginalized section of society, to those students who are first generation learners and have to support their families by contributing to the family income. The model of the Knight College is an ideal option as it gives an opportunity for higher education to these students to study at night and complete their education. It was a dream of our honorable founders that school and college dropouts be given a second chance to continue and complete their education, but at the same time taking due care that their means of earning a livelihood is not disturbed. Over the last 3 decades, many of our graduates have entered into the mainstream of the productive section of society. Needless to say, the Knight College has been instrumental in channelizing the lives of these students, steering them away from being wasted and misled by antisocial influences. Friends, it gives me great pleasure and pride to say that year 2020 also marks the golden jubilee year of Mahatma Education Society, Pillai Group of Institutions. Mahatma Education Society, established in the year 1970 with a vision to promote education for all. Under the leadership and guidance of our mentors, Dr. K.M. Vasudevan Pillai, Chairman and CEO, Mahatma Education Society, and Dr. Daphne Pillai, the chairperson of the management board of Mahatma Education Society. Today, the society has grown in size with 48 institutions, imparting quality education from kindergarten to post-graduation and doctoral programs, with over 35,000 students in 7 state-of-the-art campuses in Mumbai, Navi Mumbai, and Rasaini, with about 30 acres of land and over 3 million square feet of constructed buildings. Imparting one of the best education in the society today, the Pillai Group has a presence in A.M. Vasudevan Pillai's book, Edunation Manifesto, of his vision for the empowerment of India through education. Dr. Daphne Pillai, co-founder of the Pillai Group of Institutions, is a leader who leads from the front, a custodian of old world values and an initially has a deep understanding of the socio-economic issues affecting women and girls. Dr. Daphne is the founder president of Seroptimus International of Bombay Chembur, which is affiliated to Soroptimist International of Great Britain and Ireland, SIGBI, a women's organization which has consultative status in the United Nations. Dr. Daphne Pillai was selected to represent SIGBI at the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, CSW 62, at the United Nations headquarters in New York in March 2018, where she presented a paper on empowering rural women and girls. Madam is also the president of the International Women's Federation of Commerce and Industry, IWFCI, India chapter, a global organization dedicated to helping women entrepreneurs grow globally. She is the recipient of several honors and awards for her exemplary work in the field of women welfare and development. The most recent one being the ASSOCHAM at the Women's Leadership and Empowerment Summit held in New Delhi on 13th November 2019. In recognition of her tremendous contribution to women's empowerment through social entrepreneurship initiatives. The award ceremony was held in association with the Ministry of Women and Child Development, Government of India, and was conferred on her by the Honorary Union Minister of Women and Child Development, Smriti Irani. A leader who walks the talk, Dr. Daphne Pillai is a role model and source of inspiration to every woman in Mahatma Education Society. Thank you for being there today, Dr. Daphne Madam, with us. I congratulate the convener and the organizing committee for having chosen such a relevant topic for today's deliberations. I once again welcome all the participants who have joined us today and wish you an enriching session ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Padma Madam. Now I would like to request President of Soroptimist Welfare Association, Ms. Yvette Lee, to introduce Soroptimist International to our gathering. Before that, I take this opportunity to introduce Ms. Yvette Lee to the gathering. Ms. Yvette Lee is a certified psychological counselor and has been working in the field of mental health since the last 12 years. She is a counselor and social worker at Pillai's Group of Institutions. She is also a president at Soroptimist Welfare Association since 2018. She is the director of IWFCI India National Chapter. Her expertise lies in mental health counseling, crisis, grief and trauma counseling, and adolescents counseling. She had conducted workshops with teachers, students, parents, etc. on various topics. Through her various outreach programs, she aims at raising awareness on mental health and reducing stigma associated with mental illness. Welcome, Ms. Yvette Lee. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Anaya. I would like to start by giving you a brief introduction about Soroptimist International Bombay Chamber. Dr. Padma Rangan here has covered a lot of what we do, but like she said, we started operations in 1995. However, we were chartered by Soroptimist International of Great Britain and Ireland in the year 1997 under the able leadership of our founder president, Dr. Daphne Pillai. Today, we are registered in India as an NGO as under the name of Soroptimist Welfare Association, and we work on issues related to women and the girl child. Our projects revolve around the Sustainable Development Goals, especially that of gender equality, quality education, and reduced inequality. Our flagship project that we implement annually is the Adult Literacy Program called as the Power of a Second Chance that educates first-generation women adult learners with basic literacy skills and financial and employment generation skills like computer literacy, beautician course, tailoring, handicraft making, etc. We also have projects in the field of gender equality and sensitization, health and sanitation, and environmental consciousness. In addition to this, we celebrate various UN days. Recently, one of our projects, 16 Days of Activism, focusing on gender equality awareness, rights of women in India, and breaking the cycle of domestic violence was featured in a report compiled by Seroptimist International to be presented to the United Nations and ECOSOC. While in the world and even in India, we have seen a considerable rise in the access of women to higher education and subsequently in the representation of women at the workplace, yet we have all heard of and experienced a huge gender gap that exists in the employment arena. No matter how educated women are and what positions they hold in their respective organizations, issues like unequal pay, glass ceiling, unequal opportunities for promotions, safety at work, etc., are not unheard of. Gender roles, social structures, culture, and socializations are major factors that contributes to this second status given to women. Managements of organizations have often admitted to biases against women, like women might not be able to work extra working hours due to responsibilities at home and family, which most often affects their promotion. On the other hand, due to cultural learnings and socialization, women themselves feel inadequate and doubt their capabilities despite evident success. This is called as the imposter syndrome, and our founder president, Dr. Daphne Pillai, has spoken about this at various research conferences all over the world and also at the Commission on the Status of Women, CSW 62, at the United Nations headquarters in New York. According to me, personally, gender equality in employment means the freedom to work by choice in conditions of dignity, safety, and fairness. While things are changing and improving for us women, we still have a long way to go. I'm sure that this discussion today and the insight shared by our eminent panelists will help start a conversation on gender equality in jobs and at leadership positions, thus spreading awareness on this crucial issue. And awareness is always the first step to action. I thank Dr. Padma Rangan and the staff of Mahatma Naik Degree College of Arts and Commerce for collaborating with Seroptimist International Bombay Chamber on this platform, and we look forward to many more collaborations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evedley. It will be our honor. Now I request our Assistant Professor Dr. Eknath Zarekar, IQAC Coordinator of Mahatma, Armida Fernandez, Madam. Eknath Zarekar, sir, over to you.
Thank you, Madam. Good morning to one and all. I am Assistant Professor Dr. Eknath Zarekar, IQAC Coordinator of Mahatma Naik Degree College of Arts and Commerce. I feel very proud to introduce our today's guest panelist, Dr. Armida Fernandez, former Dean and HOD, Nanotechnology LTMG Sion Hospital, former medical doctor, Holy Family Hospital, Mumbai founder trustee, Sneha India. Sneha just now, Padma Madam told, that is Society for National Education and Health Action. Madam completed her medical graduation, that is MBBS, from Hubli and did her post-graduation from KEM Hospital, Mumbai. She stood first in the university, both at MBBS and MD exam. While working at Sion Hospital, her efforts and research always center around the survival of babies in the country with low cost of resources. She was one who encouraged mothers to step in premature unit to nurse and care for their babies. She realized that breastfeeding and breast milk had a very important role to play in reducing a mortality and morbidity in premature unit. This motivated her to work for protection, promotion, and support for breastfeeding. After establishing India's first human milk bank at Sion Hospital, she delivered a number of lectures on breastfeeding and milk banking across the world. She also made an excellent breastfeeding manual that is popularly known as Blue Model and videos with support from UNICEF. This was used for training doctors, nurses, and hospital teams across Maharashtra and other states. She conducted many training programs for maternity homes in Mumbai and across the states of Maharashtra for baby-friendly hospital initiative supported by MCGM and Government of Maharashtra. Subsequently, she played an important role in starting MYCN, that is Mother and Infant and Young Child Nutrition Program. She founded Sneha, an NGO which committed to mother newborn health nutrition empowerment, health of adolescent and prevention of violation against women and children. Sneha has entered communities in slums and chawls with 400 full-time employees and 750 volunteers who reaches the population of around 1 million in almost all districts of Maharashtra and other states including Gujarat and Jharkhand. She has presented several research papers and is recipient of many awards, including honored as Ashoka Fellow in the year 2004, Dr. B.N. Purandare Outstanding Service Award in the year 2010, and QIM Platinum Standard in Healthcare in the year 2013. On behalf of Mahatma Knight Degree College, I welcome you, madam. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eknath Zarekar, sir. Now, I would like to request Assistant Professor Tushar Pawar, sir, co-coordinator of this event, to introduce our next panelist, Mrs. Jyoti Mapsekar, madam. Tushar, sir, over to you.
Thank you, Anaya, madam. Am I audible?
Not clearly, Tushar, sir.
Now? Hello.
Better.
I'm Assistant Professor Tushar Pawar, co-convener of this program. Annie Marichel said, a woman is the full circle. Within her is the power to create, nurture, and transform. A successful woman is one who can build a firm foundation with the bricks others have thrown at her. A very good morning to one and all. It's my proud privilege to introduce our near and dear Jyoti Mapsekar, madam.
Yeah.
Madam is BSc, B.Litt, and MA in Sociology. Madam is active member of Women Movement of India since 1975, and she is one of the founder member of Sri Mukti Sangatna. At present, she is
दीपा अमावस्येच्या हार्दिक
Sorry to interrupt, Tushar, sir. Participants are requested to put their videos and audios off. Please cooperate. Yes, Tushar, sir.
At present, she is working in the capacity of president at Sri Mukti Sangatna. Madam took VRS from Academy of Architecture in 2001 as chief librarian and devoted her energy in organizing 5,000 West speaker in self-help group. She is also known as playwright, songwriter, composer, and actor. She wrote many stories in Marathi and various languages, namely Mulgi Zali Ho, Hunda Nako Gabai, Baap Re Baap, and performed these acts at international and national levels with her active group. She was convener for 7th WPI conference conducted by University of Mumbai. Le Kandho Par Andha Akash, song composed and written by her and presented in international conference at Beijing in 1995. This song is included in the Post-Beijing Poetry published by Minnesota University, US. The Japanese Broadcasting Corporation made documentary on her for her contribution towards society in their program Asia Crossword, which was telecast in 1997. She has edited 11 books and manual on women's issues and waste management. She has received many awards and rewards from various organizations for her contribution in women's movement. She is also a recipient of Hirkani Awards from Mumbai, Doordarshan, and Savitribai Phule Awards from Government of Maharashtra. She has also honored by President of India with Nari Shakti Puraskar for her contribution in women empowerment. She has received Green Hero Award from US Embassy and Terry in 2011. I must say, a society that fails to harness the energy and creativity of its women is at a huge disadvantage in the modern world. With this, I welcome Jyoti Mapsekar Madam on behalf of Mahatma Knight Degree College and Seroptomists International for this panel discussion. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Tushar sir. Moving to our panel discussion, I request Associate Professor and WDC in charge of Mahatma Knight Degree College, Dr. Lata Krishnan Madam, to take over the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Anaya. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lata Krishnan, and I will be moderating this session today. It is my privilege, extremely proud privilege, to have eminent panelists today to discuss our topic, a very, very important topic, and we have to talk about it because it is something that is burning in our hearts. It is about gender equality, particularly job opportunities, leadership roles in the Indian scenario. I would begin by asking questions to our panelist, Dr. Armida Fernandez. The plan is that we will finish with questions for Dr. Armida Fernandez, and then we begin with Jyoti Mapsekar ma'am. Would like to round it up with our big final question, where we would like to hear and get answers and see whether we can lead the change that we really need. Dr. Armida Fernandez, what is the overall situation in India when it comes to gender equality? Do you think India is faring well as a country?
Okay. Thank you so much. Let me first thank all of you all. I don't want to name them. We've spent enough time. And I know the students are all waiting. And on behalf of the students, I want to apologize. Normally when I talk, I love to see students' faces to make sure they're listening and they're not dozing. I don't know what they're up to, but now you all can do whatever you want. And maybe you should listen because maybe you'll learn something from our experiences. So thank you for calling me. So let me start by saying that really the position of women, their job opportunities and leadership is abysmal in our country. It is so abysmal that only 28% of our women are in the working, only 28%. And it used to be 35% in 2010, and it has come down to 28%, which is something that we didn't want to see. Some change had to happen. So that's really a sad thing. And if you look at the World Economic Forum in 2017, that looked at on gender, economic participation and opportunity, do you know that India stands 139 out of 144? Means we are the 5th lowest in the world. So it is really a tragedy to see what is happening in our country. Forget about what is happening in the world. Look at the COVID crisis. Even in the COVID crisis, that 23% more women have lost their jobs compared to men. So at every stage, it is the job opportunities for women are so much lower. Now, one is okay, you don't have an opportunity, but when you're qualified, you work hard, at least you need to get a proper salary. And what happens is that women earn 34% less than men in any job that they take. We're not just talking about corporates. We're talking about agricultural section. We're talking about even domestic workers. Men are paid more than women. What a tragedy. So it's really sad. And finally, I work now for the social sector, NGO. And you would say, oh my God, NGOs. Mostly women love to start NGOs. They're very much in the NGOs, and at least in the NGO sector, it will be equal for men and women. Yes, lots of women in the NGO sector. But there was a study done by Dasra that interviewed more than 300 NGOs. And do you know what? The larger the NGO and the larger the budget, the head of that NGO is usually a male. So if it's a small NGO, you're okay with women. But if you have a big NGO, you have a huge budget. So at every stage, really, women have a tough time. So I think the state, as I said, not dismal, but abysmal, Alata.
Thank you, Dr. Armida. Now that you have given us all the facts and figures, according to you, what are the causes for this not so satisfactory scenario?
So what are the causes? I think the causes are the patriarchal system that we belong to. Look at the position of a girl. Even before she is born, prenatal sex determination, babies are not women, girls are not allowed to be born. They are born, and then you have female infanticide. In our country, female infanticide. So at every stage, even before birth, they are being discriminated against. And then as the child grows through infancy, you look at different classes. Now, you know, they are given a gender role, and you will know, all of you all who are attending this class will know, when you're a child or even an infant toddling and all, you're a girl, pink for a girl, blue for a boy. Already, that's okay. Colors I'm not worried about. But what is worse is, what toys are girls given? Girls are given dolls. Girls are giving houses. Girls are given pots and pans, meaning, yeah, she's being brainwashed. When you grow up, you'll have to have babies, you'll have to do cooking, so that is, and what are boys given? Boys are given cars, you know, they're given planes, they're given mechano sets. So that gender is being established even in infancy, that brainwashing starts. And as the child grows, what is happening as the child grows? Look at the schools. I know, higher socioeconomic, maybe girls go to good schools, but look at the communities I work with. If you're a girl, then you don't go to the best of schools. If it's a boy, we have to go to a private school. I'm talking of slum communities. Girl, municipal school is all right, something close by. So even the schools, tuitions, good tuitions for boys. Girls, it doesn't matter how they do. So they are being discriminated at school. And what about housework? Girls, come and help me in the kitchen, come and help me with smaller children. Girls are, have you heard mothers say, call the sons, come here into the kitchen, help me wash the dishes? So immediately from infancy, from childhood, they are given that role that girls will do this. If there is in our slum communities, when the child, they have a younger child, then the girl is made to drop out of school to look after the younger child, never the boy. So this goes on. Then as you go to college and you study, fortunately, the amount of education, more and more girls are getting educated and they do well. So he said, okay, they are educated. If you look at the medical college, you have more seats for girls than boys. So they're getting educated. You see at the percentages also, girls are doing very well in school, topping in schools and colleges. But when they go to a job, when they go for a job, do you know at the entry level what happens? It looks as though they're acting. Are you married? And all, the moment they say, are you married? So what is going on in their mind? If she's not married, the moment she gets married, she'll leave a job and she'll go to another place. That is one. Secondly, if she's married, do you have children? If you have no children, oh God, she's married. Now she'll go on maternity leave. So those things are already going in the minds of the people who are selected. So women find it difficult to get jobs, and because they are being discriminated even at that job level. Even when it comes to promotion, it's not easy for a woman to try and get promotions because of the situation. What about the other causes? Look at the sexual harassment that happens at workplace. So it's not easy for a woman. Many jobs are not taken up by women because of the sexual harassment that takes place. And I think the one big problem is, I would say of the three, one is from infancy. Second is because of that mindset, even a woman, as soon as she finishes college, mothers are already looking out for bridegrooms, whom will she marry and all that. She's not even finished college. The moment she's married, he said, now within the 3 months, they'll say, have you missed your periods? Are you expecting? So that's sort of a role. So that woman, poor woman, when she takes up, she said, what is a priority? How can I look after my work? How can I look after my home? So as an individual, she's caught up in that thing, work, home, which a man doesn't. A man doesn't go through. He goes off to work and anything happens, he knows, my wife is there. But a woman is working, poor woman will have to do this balance that happens. And, of course, our entertainment media is the one that endorses it. Who's the virtuous woman and the heroine who gives her life for the man and the family and things like that. So this endorsement happens at every stage. So I think Lata, when you say that from birth through their lives, at job opportunities, at promotions, women are having a very difficult time.
Okay. Dr. Armida, you just now explained very nicely about the conscious and the unconscious biases. And as you very correctly said, it is not just in the economically underprivileged or uneducated sections that these biases exist, but truly, even in the affluent society, even in educated classes, we do see unconscious biases. Why? Even in our houses, I don't know where we pick this up from, but we do see these biases. And so correctly, you have explained that it trickles into the workplace. Dr. Armida, if you were to list the barriers for the entry of a woman into a position, if there is a job and she has to get that job, and then she has a lot of barriers to enter. And even after she enters, the promotion ladder, and then the seniority issue, and then what are all the challenges or the barriers that a woman faces? Can you explain this to us?
I think many of them I have already covered, Lata. So I said the first barrier is a personal barrier.
Okay.
She may not have the confidence. Can I do this job? How good? Because she has been brainwashed from the beginning that, someone else might be better. So the first barrier, I think, is a very personal barrier. How confident she is about herself and how ambitious. How many girls, for all those students who are listening, I want to say, how many girls will say, I want to do the best. I'm going to get into that company. I'm going to be the head of the company. I want to be the principal of that college, not just as a teacher. So that's sort of a personal barrier that is there in that. Then at the workplace barrier, because majority of companies don't have laid down policies for gender equality. So if they don't have that gender equality policies, they would take in less women, they're paid less, there is no wage transparency. So that at that level, there is a huge barrier. And the third is at the promotion. And I think at the promotion, the whole thing is that it doesn't matter how well educated, how smart, how dedicated a person is. They take into consideration, would she come, the leave that is taken, would she be able to? So these are sort of invisible barriers that are already working in the minds of the company. They don't want to lose a minute. They don't want to, maternity leave, child sick leave, all that they don't want to lose. How many companies, for example, if a woman has to work and work comfortably, how many companies have creches where the babies can be looked after? Although there is a policy, but how many people have creches? How many people, I would also say at the domestic front, the barrier at the domestic front is huge. How many men in the family say that we will do domestic work and work together? So some part of the work has to be taken over by men. You know, if the woman is working, will a man do a shopping? Will the man help in the kitchen? Would some of the work from the children be taken up by men? So these sort of barriers are there at every stage.
Thank you, Dr. Almeida. My second question to you is, the NGO you founded works to empower adolescents and women in many ways. What have been your experiences in working with the marginalized and vulnerable communities on the aspect of skills building and preparing them to become confident women who can enter job markets?
Okay, let me tell you my experience. I want to start with my experience in Sion Hospital. You know, when a woman delivered, I looked after babies, I'm a neonatologist. When a woman delivered, and if she delivered a female child, many of the men or the family members didn't come to visit her because she was a girl child. So that was the first thing that, you know, even in the hospital. Something even worse than that. You know, when a child was seriously ill, I was in the intensive care maybe for 2-3 weeks, and the mother was there with the baby. The mother would say, let me take my baby home, I want to go. I said, how can you take the baby serious? She says, no, if I don't go home, there's no one to cook for my husband and he will get married again. Look at the stress on that woman. That, you know, I'm talking of, you know, all our people were slum dwellers at Sion Hospital, coming from the slum. So that was, the third is, look at the stress that a woman, we had a 6-week-old baby who was raped, and that mother was in a daze. She didn't know who had raped the baby, why. Did the police case follow up in the police case? So that was the plight of that girl child. And the last thing in the hospital that was really very hurtful is that, you know, we had a special ward for burns for women. The only ward, men ward were 5 women, but for burns, a special ward. And you know, when that woman had to make her dying statement, the husband, if it a homicidal burn, husband would say, if you say I was responsible, I will not look after the children. So that poor woman in a dying statement didn't convict the husband because of her children. So that was the state of the women. So what happened in my NGO? So in Dharavi, when we looked at the women, and we first formed our first women groups, we said, we'll have appreciative inquiry to build up that women's confidence that, I'm a wonderful woman, I can do something with my life. So in that AI, we first asked a question, you know, tell me why you are a good mother. Do you know in that group, not a single mother in the slum said she was a good mother. Then we asked them, who gets up in the morning to fill the water? Oh, we do. Who cooks for the children and the husband? I do. Who takes your child to school? I do. Who does this? She was doing everything. So we said, look at the power you have. You're looking after your child, giving birth, you're feeding, you're clothing, you're taking them to school. Aren't you a good mother? But do you know what the women said? But that's my duty. Look at the tragedy. She didn't feel empowered with what she was doing. So our first work was to change the mindset of the women and make them powerful, that you are capable. I used to say, we used to tell them, 3 goddesses are in you. There is, you know, there's Saraswati, there is wisdom, there's Durga, there is strength, and there is Lakshmi, and you can get that, you know, wealth into that woman. So the empowerment of women started with these women's groups, and the time came when we made these women fight for their rights. You know, something happening, we said, you can make a police case, and women get together, then they have power, and they started. The second thing we realized, we were working with women, damage is already done. So we started adolescents, you know, groups of adolescents, and now there's no point in concentrating only on women, because men should also rule but it was men, you know, when elder men are different. So when we took the youth, we had skill building in girls and boys. So it was not girls alone, girls and boys together. So boys knew that they had other domestic roles and all. So there was, we had, these sort of roles that are created in both boys and girls so that they can work together. So I think that was very good. And the youth did a wonderful job. The third is when we talked about violence against women, that was another thing. How many cases of violence? And do you know that women never complain? Why didn't they complain? Because she said, no, he hits me once in a way. She thought it was, that is the tragedy, she thought it was all right to be beaten by a man. Can you believe it? So then we had to tell them, no, it's not, that's not right. And only when the man hit her child, then she would come to the NGO. But things have changed totally. We worked for it for a long time. Now women know what it is. And now we have women's groups and we have youth groups and have volunteers that all fight. These volunteers who are trained, not only do they reach out to the women, to take them to the police station, to make a police case, to register it. So we've empowered the youth and the women to fight for their causes. And I'll tell you what is the most empowering thing that we have done. Skill building, they've never been trained. You don't have to go to school, learn ABCD and all. You can learn a whole lot of skills by just training the women, train them on health, train them on violence. And what methods did we use? We used art, we used, we used dance, we used drama. And you should have seen the plays in the communities that our women, our girls, our boys did to bring about this change. And I want to tell you that uneducated women, you say, we do a lot of research in Sneha. We had to collect research data. And they'll say, how can we collect research data? These people are, hardly 7th standard pass, they can't. Do you know, we gave every woman a tablet. She learned to collect data. And we have, 300 women across the slums who don't have their degrees who are collecting research data using tablets. And I think this training has empowered women. So I think if we work with women, we work with girls, more important, work with boys and men. We have men's groups for violence against women. It's made a difference. So that you don't concentrate on the women, concentrate on boys when they're young, concentrate on men to bring about that change, and that change happens.
Thank you, Dr. Urmila. I think those were really wonderful initiatives you have taken at Sneha, and we are going to definitely learn from your sharing. Dr. Fernandez, what do you feel about this debate on leadership traits? So if we say leadership traits and skills being different in women and men, is it more about just the conditioning or the fact that you believe that men and women are differently wired? So can you give us your views on leadership traits in women?
The first question I think that even as people or even as students, we need to ask is leadership are you a born leader? Some people say I am a born leader. And that means you have the genetic composition to lead. Now, these born leaders are two types. One is politically born leader, father, grandfather were in politics. And second is those with big corporates. You're these big, people who have big businesses and they hand it over on a silver platter to their, whether they make good leaders. So leadership, please remember, all you all who are listening to me, all you students, that leadership is something that we can learn. It's not an inborn trait. It is not only certain people that you can learn to be. It's something that you can learn to be. So everybody can be a good leader. You have to learn the skills of being a good leader. So what is it in women? Yes, women and men are differently wired and we have different skills. But if you look at the skills of what defines a leader, there are some 9 skills. This includes, you have to have, your intellect, that you are doing, or the way you do a role model. Do you take people on board. There are lots of traits that make a good leader. And out of the 9 traits, which I don't want to go into detail, women have 5 of it. But let me tell you why women make good leaders. But first of all, whenever she takes decisions, it is more of a participative decision. And in any program, in any, when there is a participative decision taking, it is much, and so we call it democratic transformation. That is something that a woman is very good at. Secondly, she puts down expectations and then rewards you for that expectations, which is also a wonderful trait in a woman. And women make good role models. They're better there to handle stress and pressure, because she's undergoing this all the time. Women are better at doing multiple tasks. They're better task masters, and women are more empathetic, and whatever they do, you heard Daphne and all what they do for the social good, you are also doing some social good. Whereas a man's way of thinking is, I will take a decision and I decide, and this is what has to be done. The way of leadership is totally different. And therefore, there are studies that say that even if there is one woman director in a company, that company does better than those without any women directors. And the classic example today in the COVID crisis, we're looking at COVID crisis. All the countries that are headed by women as prime ministers and presidents have done a much better job of containing that COVID, epidemic. So if you look at look at Germany, you look at New Zealand, Australia, these are women who have taken that decision. And therefore, this is an example where, they are only 10% of all the heads of the states, but those countries where women were there, they made. So I think the traits that women have, they might be a little different but that help them become a better leaders.
Thank you, Dr. Armida. That was, I think that really calls for a round of applause. Cheers for all women leaders and fighting or leading the fight against the coronavirus. Dr. Fernandez, is there anything that can be done at the workplace to make women feel more comfortable and ensure that they don't face discrimination or sexual harassment?
At the workplace, like I said, what needs to be done is they need to have a policy for gender equality. And not only have a policy is one thing, but they actually have to put it into action. And it's something that is not easy. Most companies don't have it, but I've come across companies that have that policy. They have a policy and they follow it, and it makes a world. So that is one thing. Policy, put the policy into action. The second one is that at the workplaces, there is could be a sexual harassment. This is one thing that comes in the way of women. So you have to have, today every company, everyone has to have a sexual harassment committee that looks into issues of women, and you must make sure. So if a woman is not promoted, even there might be some relation to this. So you can fight for the fact that you are a woman, you're well qualified, and I can do that. Third is at a company level, if they make it easier for a woman. For example, if you have a creche, I remember the telephone company and at Dada, in my work with breastfeeding, I used to go and give talks. And when I went there, they had a creche for bringing the babies to the creche. So if you have a place where your babies are kept, your babies are safe. Only unfortunate thing is, in a city like Bombay, to travel is bad enough, but to travel with babies is even more difficult. So the point is, if you're close to work, then that is different. So if you have this. Another thing that women have to do is they look after their old parents, grandparents, mother-in-law is old, father-in-law. So in the world over, what they have is daycare centers not only for babies, but also for seniors. This is something that we need to push for in the future. And the most important thing is, the workplace. But I would say that if a woman is working at the workplace, you must see sharing of responsibility between that man at home and that woman. That is extremely, extremely, when that changes, the life of jobs for women will be much easier. Even climbing to leadership will be easier.
Thank you, Dr. Almeida. I will be coming back to you, Dr. Fernandez, and I'm very happy to welcome Ms. Jyoti Mapsekar, ma'am. Jyoti, ma'am, can you hear me? Ms. Jyoti Mapsekar, ma'am, founder Stree Mukti Sangatna. I welcome you for the panel discussion. Jyoti, ma'am, can I get a response from you, madam?
Jyoti madam, unmute yourself.
Yes. Welcome, Jyoti ma'am. Madam, from your experience, please comment on gender equality in job opportunities. Are women the first choice to fill up a vacant position in an organization? Madam, are you privy to conscious or unconscious biases during hiring workforce?
Yes, of course, there are biases all over about giving the women jobs. Major this thing also comes, when this 1948, the Factory Act has come into being, and that actually recommended, or rather mandated, the creche. And you will be surprised that 40,000 women were working in the textile section, textile mills at that time. And when this law was introduced, immediately the women's number was reduced, like anything. And when actually mills were finally closed, there were only 4,000 women. So this is also the major thing. When women are given jobs, they also see that, this problem of maternity leave. And when the children are young, the women will take leave. This has become a major thing. After textile mills, the women got job. There were so many pharmaceutical factories were established in India, and it is in 80s. And there also, moment they get married, they used to throw them out.
Okay.
Why? Because they'll have to give maternity leave, and they'll have to provide a creche. Because for practice it was compulsory. But there was a big struggle, there was a big battle. The unions also came together, and then the pharmaceutical industries started creche. I will tell you, we are running a creche at SIBS, which is a export zone, and it's compulsory for them to have a creche. But creche had only one child because it was in such a shambles that nobody wanted to keep their child there. So we had to take that into hand and have a good kind of creche. We had to establish that. And then the girls started, the young girls who were working there started keeping their children there. So maternity leave and creche are major things for the working women. And what government has done is they have made a law for only factories. And the government offices are not there in that in that law. Therefore, the thousands of women who are going to offices do not know what to do with their children. And maybe I think in 1987 we had a signature campaign of 40,000 women, and we gave it to government of Maharashtra that wherever there are housing colleges should keep one flat for creche, so that in that capacity the women in that area can definitely keep their children. And you give it to Mahila Mandals and NGOs to run those creches. Don't make it like a municipal school. So it should be better managed. And we also started running creches, how to manage the creches, because we wanted to have a good institution to look after the children. Government gave us 4 flats. two were there in such an area where there were no working women. So we surrendered those flats. But two flats were there, are there in Borivali, and we are still running the creche over there. And then otherwise, then big like SEEBS or Reserve Bank of India has given. So creche also, if women want to work, I mean, if they want to work freely, then creche is the most important thing for them. Another thing I feel that women's education, usually this women's education always depends on in which caste they are born, if in that caste the educated boys are there or not, and also on dowry. Because parents never feel that the whatever expenditure they do on girls' education is an investment. For boys' education, they feel it is investment. But the girls are getting married, so why should they spend on their education? This is a major bias, where the girls are denied the education which they want to take. They don't have a choice. Mostly in my time, most of the girls were used to go to only arts. I'll tell you another example. I was working in architecture college, and in that architecture college, when I joined in 81, at that time the girls percentage was only 10%. Okay, and when I left in 2001, the girls were around 50%. Now they are almost 60 to 70%. So boys always used to be very happy that the girls are there. Why? Because less competition. Because they feel that girls will never go to sites. Same in the civil engineering colleges, girls will never go to sites for working in the stones and brick and all that. So it's good that they will be at a computer and design the building, and we will go to site, so we will get more opportunities for work. But I used to ask them why girls will not go to sites, because the construction workers who are working on the sites, half of them are women. So women are already there. So why we should feel that girls should not go to sites and all? It is your bias, because the girl who stood first also married a builder into the builder family, and she was really for the signature only. I mean, her signature was more important for her than going to sites. This was the example given by everyone. Now the things are changing. Girls are going to sites, and they are also, I mean, not only just designing, but also going to sites and supervising everything. But it took so many years to take away that bias. So biases are there. And if you see the education, as I said earlier, that they don't think that this is an investment. See the advertisements. The girls have to, I mean, the parents have to start saving money for girls' marriage. See all the advertisements. See the bank's advertisements. I mean, this I wrote in my play in 83. Still the advertisements are same. See the LIC's policies. Let me tell you that the freedom fighter policy, freedom fighter concession which was there, the scholarships, there also the money was there for girls' marriage, daughters' marriage, not for sons' marriage. Why? There is no spending on the son's marriage. So this is the bias, that you have to spend on girls' marriage, and that therefore you have to save the money for not for education but for the girls' marriage. So this is also a major thing, I feel, major bias which is in the society, and then that is also reflected in the government. Though our constitution says that we must get equal opportunity, but every time women have to fight, every time, for getting an equal opportunity, and that we are doing for last so many years. For 45 years, I'll say, we are fighting for equal opportunity, and still new and new things are coming, and then women have to fight.
Thank you, Jyoti ma'am. So I understand from your response, I feel that, you say that we are, I mean, women are child bearers, and therefore they have to pay the price, even though they are talented, even though they are intelligent, even though they are hardworking, but they are the ones who do not get those jobs. They cannot get positions. On the same lines, Ms. Mapsekar, what is your opinion on leadership roles? So in the workplace, are women offered positions of leadership very easily? What is your experience in this matter?
No, I don't think women are offered leadership very easily. Everywhere women have to fight. Give you we are only talking till now about the urban women, but let us go to Gram Panchayat. Okay. So Gram Panchayat, there are no ladders for women. That's what I feel. If you go to Gram Panchayat, there are all women panchayats are there. There are sarpanch are there. And still there is no reservation in assembly and parliament. So where the women will go who are leaders? They don't have any ladder for that. They have to prove themselves doubly than men to prove. See the percentage of women in parliament, where the laws are made. In Gram Panchayat, the laws are not made. And still Gram Panchayat women still had to fight to get their own this thing. Do you know that in the beginning when the women started coming in the Gram Panchayat, men never used to give them chair. Even if she's sarpanch, they will say that she should sit down. And there was a flag hoisting on every 15th August, and government, the sarpanch should hoist the flag. But in no panchayat they will allow women to hoist a flag. Therefore, there were so many complaints that the government has to make a resolution, GR, that sarpanch, whether she is a male or a female, they have to hoist the flag. For every step you have to fight. And there are no ladders. If there are ladders, then women can. But then again, if suppose there are exams for that leadership, or for you want to go to higher position, how women can go? They have to come home, cook, look after the children. So there are no crashes in the evening. Crash is over at 5 o'clock. What they will do with those exams? What they will do with the training? Can they go outside for training? They had to fight for that also. Fight in the sense, actually it's a fight within also. It's not only with the family members, but inside also you have to fight with yourself, because you have so many sanskaras for over the years that you have to first appeal to yourself. That I had to, as Madam has said, that you have to not only talk with family members and then face the society, but before that, you have to have your own confidence that I want to build my career. And if that confidence is not there, how we are going to go ahead? That is also another major problem, I feel.
Jyoti ma'am, you just spoke about women not being privileged to take on those leadership roles, and you gave us why they do not get those positions. But can you just explain as to even in the rural or even in the urban areas, if there is a talented woman, if she is ambitious, if she's educated, in spite of that, if you look at the corporate world today, there is this culture when it is the top position, it has to be reserved for males.
Yeah.
So, ma'am, why is there this gap? Besides just, of course, the fact that she has her roles to play and she has her sanskaras, is it now not time? We are all now millennial children. People are thinking in a very modern, liberated way. But in spite of this, we feel very sorry to see that somewhere women have accepted the fact that they are not good leaders. So, ma'am, are most women leaders not successful? Is this one of the reasons why women are not preferred to be given leadership roles?
I don't think women are not successful. Women have shown their merit everywhere. And still there is a tough competition for the top post. And there is a money and muscle power everywhere. And so your talent is all, even if you are talented, many times you don't get justice for that talent.
Yes.
And there are so many things come in between you and success.
Correct. So even if you've got that leadership position, madam, you have to, as a woman, really struggle, really fight the fight from outside, the fight from within to hold on to that position, do well and prove your merit.
Yes.
Uh,
yes. even if you are talented, I'll give you just one example. To perform our play, Beti Aayi Hai, we used to go to Mussoorie in Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy, where IAS are trained. Their IPS officers also were trained there. And when we used to go there and perform, we used to stay there for 2-3 days for discussion with the trainees there after the performance. We found that the IPS women who were taking the training for IPS were telling us that we had never gone to ground for playing. She was from Bihar, and suddenly in this course I'm told to practice horse riding and run for 5 kilometers and all. I can't do it. She said, because if I'm not allowed any time to go even on the playground in the evening, how am I going to do that? So she said, when I'll become IPS in my district or my city, what I'm going to do is I will encourage girls to play. And only policy also doesn't make much sense. Let me tell you, in 1994, the first women's policy had come. We were there. Srimukhi Sangatna was there in all the policy making exercises.
Yeah.
What happened is that what happened is that all the women's organization asked government to reserve more positions for women in the police force. Okay. Imagine that when we went in 89, there were also hardly 3 or 4 women were there for taking course in police for IPS. But even the lower category, police category, Sipahi category also, hardly 5% or 6% women were there. So all the women organization demanded that we must have more reserved seats for women. After 10 years, when the policy was reviewed, we found that girls are not taking admission for the police jobs. Why? Then we started researching why, what happened. So we found out that there are conditions there. You have to pass 12th standard with 55%, then you have certain height, specified height and specified weight. Now, when the girls from a lower middle class family is going for the exams, then they might get 55% because girls are always, ahead of boys in 10th and 12th standard exams. But their height was less. There was a malnutrition, and then as they were not participating in his sports and all, they could not compete there. So hardly 5 or 7%. So that means we have to go to basics again. See that the girls they have proper nutrition, their weights are better, then their height should be better, and they should know to learn whether they have to go to army or police or any such tough jobs, security guards and all. They must have strength, and which is not there. Another thing, also one more reason is that there are shifts there. Whether they are nurses or ayas or police, telephone operators, if there are no creches there, how women are going to have the shifts? That is another problem here. Unless and until you have somebody in the house. I mean, they say that behind every successful man, there is a woman. But I will say, if the woman has to be successful, there is complete system which is required. So you require either mother-in-law or creche, or somebody who is looking after your children. And there is no infrastructure that women will go and stay safe. Now girls are going into ITs. They are doing shift. Meena, madam has said, there is a, in telephones, they have the creches. I don't know whether all nursing quarters are having creches. Okay. No. And then day nurses, they don't have creche. So whether they'll keep the children with their odd shifts. So this infrastructure which is required for the safety, for the children's care, these are not there. And government has very cleverly they are outside and they are compelled factories and everyone. But for the urban middle class women or even for the rural women, the creche facility is not there. So though there is in Narega also, they have to give the creche. But the creches are not there. So it's a compulsion. But you know now that even the small creches, there is 18% GST on creche. So if such 18% GST is there, how women are going to start a creche? So this service, which is actually should be subsidized. If you want women in the workforce, such services and infrastructure should be subsidized by government, but which is not subsidized at all. So that is also one very major problem.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Papsekar. Now I would like to, I request both the panelists to give us the, I will be asking the final big question, though both your opinions and what can be done, but just as a summary, I would like to ask, it is the big question that we are waiting for. And what are your suggestions for bringing about change? Will the millennials' progressive views on gender lead to a more equal workplace in the years ahead? Can we hope for an equal workplace in the near future? This question is for both the panelists. Who would like to respond first? Dr. Armida? Ms. Mapsekar?
You know what? Let me tell you, what is my hope for the millennium? Is it going to change? And I think that even globally, the change has taken so long. In India, it is going to take a long time. And where do we have to start? Where do we have to start? We have to start at the patriarchal society, which is, it is brainwashed not only by men, but by women in the house, the mother in the house, the mother-in-law in the house. All women first must decide, my son and daughter will be treated equally. My daughter will work. My daughter-in-law will work. So that decision has to be there by a woman. But at the same time, men have to bring about that change. Jyoti was talking about creches. What is a man doing? If he is there, if he wants to help the wife, if the wife is working, why can't a man look after half the domestic work? If there is if there is a balance between the man and woman, so that mind change, I think, Lata, unless that change happens very early in a woman's mind, in a man's mind, it'll be difficult to change, because you can have laws and policies and things. You can have it at the level of working, say, government jobs or political say, we'll make acts and laws and legislation. But finally, that woman who's there, who's working, who needs to be a leader, who needs to climb up, she has to make sure that the house or the family, the children, and it has to be equal distribution. So I would repeat and say that one is the mind change in a woman herself. That mother, that mother-in-law, that grandmother should say that I will make sure the girl in my family succeeds. Secondly, that man should agree and should help. If a man is cooperative, I think it is much easier for that woman to succeed. The second is all the laws and legislations that we've talked down at the working level. That when you have the job opportunities, take for granted she's married, not married, children, no matter. She's smart, she's qualified, she's hardworking, she's capable. She will do well, and therefore we will help her with whatever needs. So these are the help her with the creche, or help her with facilities to come and go, or whatever it is. Another, I would say, flexi timings. In the United States, it's such a wonderful thing for nurses. They have a group of nurses. So some nurse will say, come on Monday and Thursday, because my husband is there at home to look after the children. They don't have maids, they don't have So they will adjust. So flexi timings, we do that in Sneha. Later timings, adjust your timings, but that are so flexi timings. A safety for women to travel. If they go in the middle of the night, if whatever jobs they have, there must be safety for women to travel at that. So all this has to be taken into consideration. My first and most important to every woman who's listening, and for men who'll have their sisters, who'll have their daughters, I want to say, encourage women, give her that confidence that you are not only good, you are capable, you can do well, and you can reach the top. If you have that determination, I think they will. And finally, don't keep quiet. If you need to get to that position, make sure that you fight and get that position. But having said all this, feeling very strongly about it, it's going to take time, Lata, and we must bring about that mind change as early as possible.
Yes, just sharing with you, ma'am, during this COVID. Yes, just sharing, since I'm the moderator, I have this opportunity. The COVID time when all of us had to share with the cooking and the cleaning, I just realized that the boys in the family really didn't know how to cook. So we made a beginning and we taught them how to cook. And we made sure that, they took their turns in cooking and cleaning. So that is gender equality that we brought about in our homes when, at least in my house, during the COVID lockdown. So yes, Dr. Admira, thank you for sharing. I request Ms. Mapsekar ma'am for her final comments.
Yeah. Actually, I feel, as I earlier said, that the infrastructure development and supported by government, not running by government, but strongly supported by government with good funds for that should be there. Like, I will give you one small example. There is a ESIC scheme. Of course, I think 70 to 80% women work in unorganized sector only, so it's of no use to them. But wherever there is an organized sector, and ESIC schemes are there, not for the very high salary bracket, but in the middle salary bracket. If the ESIC scheme is there, women are given maternity fund, 6 months salary by ESIC. So this is very good, because if that is given by ESIC, it means the owner doesn't have to suffer that. So this is the reason. I mean, this can be, if it is really such kind of a creche fund, because see, children is the wealth of nation. So if you want to develop them, you have to have such creche funds at the government level, so that whosoever goes on maternity leave, the burden should not be there on the management, but management can pay, so that they will give more opportunity to women. At present, they don't take women because they're scared about the maternity leave. Then there won't be any money. She will be sit at home, and we have to have additional person. So infrastructure is very important. Then there is, of course, flexi time, as Dr. Ahmed has said.
Hello.
Then,
hello. हाँ मैडम बोलो.
Then there should be safety. It is not only in the night shifts and all, but even the rural area. We know that high sexual harassment at a workplace has come because Bhauri Devi was raped. She was a community worker in Rajasthan, and she was raped because she opposed child marriage. So such kind of safety, such kind of safety net is required for women. Another thing is there should be hostels. Working women's hostels are so less that women want to come to the city and work there, where they will stay. So there are very few working women's hostel, and now the municipal corporation, few years ago we had meetings with municipal corporation, and municipal corporation had agreed. First time they agreed the planning. There were no planners first in municipality. Now the planners are there. They reserved the spaces for women. Some training centers for women, and also the big large women's hostel with creche facility. So this is very important move. First thing also has not started. They have not started building, but I'm sure that once it is there, in the planning process, that Mumbai plan they have started, so that will be very helpful, I feel. There are, of course, the issue of toilets is there, which is very important. That everywhere the toilets should be available. Girls don't go to sometimes to school because there are no toilets. Especially when they have periods, they just don't go to school because toilets are not available. Water is not available. All these should be available for the girls. So girls and women's special needs are to be considered. Okay. Another thing I want to say is that my experience is that, when the women go out for the job means out of the country or in some other city, when men go for such jobs, women take care of the old people and the children and the farm and other animals, everything. But when women leave and go, the man doesn't take care. So the responsible man, one of my friends says that we have enough Savitri Bai now, we have to search for Jyotiba. So that way we have to see that how to make men responsible. So we are having for last almost since 1996 we are having a Jidnyasa course in schools. It is schools based, teaching boys also, girls and boys both, about the adolescence, stress management, vocational guidance, sexuality and other courses. We have covered almost 5 lakh students in last 20 years or 24 years. But it's not enough, it should be in the syllabus. Should be the syllabus, and school level only they should be taught. There is a famous poet and activist, Kamla Bhasin, you might have heard her name. She always used to say that if you have to fight violence, you should spread love and also teach men for baby caring. ये जो ममता कहते हैं ना, वो ममता बेबी के केयर से ही आती है. So teach men how to care for babies, and then they will have that mamata, and then they will also start caring. Suddenly you say look after the child, they won't do that. But how systematically we have to teach them about the caring, that will be beneficial for all the families and especially for the women. And also nowadays they are getting married late, they are getting children late, so the grandparents are not available to look after their children. So we have to take this thing into the mind and see how the infrastructures are built everywhere, every colony, near station. Earlier railway authorities had given space creches, and near so many, at least near 10 stations, the creches were there. Suddenly they stopped and we don't know what to do. So there should be a policy, proper policy and infrastructure. And I think Mahila Ayog, Women's Commission and all, they should take lead into that. And policy was made in 2000, the first 1994, then again in 2013. But after both the policies were made, with the help of women's groups, the government was changed, and the policies were, earlier it was in the books, and now it is in the virtual space. It is in the website.
That's right.
So how we can implement those policies, that is also important. Making policies not very, because we all know about the women's issues, we're doing it for last so many years.
Sure.
But the implementation of the policy is very important, and how we put pressure on the government, how we can come together and put pressure on the government, that is very important, I feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vapsekar. So implementation is the key. So leaving you with these thoughts, I now open the session to the audience. So if anybody in the audience has a question, you could unmute yourself and ask your question. Please name the panelists to whom you want to address the question. Please give your name before you ask your question.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, ma'am. This is Mehrarti Bade.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, Mehrarti.
Actually, I wanted to know, not know, but this is always said that you want equality. Then why do you want these facilities? at the workplace, having some extra, not extra, but sometimes we need to adjust ourselves in case of timings, etc., etc. Or there is maternity leave also, or if you ask for childcare leave, it is always said that it is not at all needed when you ask for equality. You have to work with us as we do at a workplace. So how to deal with these things?
Yes, Dr. Armita.
You know what I would say is that it is not that you have to, if you have that leave, maternity leave, you can't say that if you have to work like a man, then you should have no babies. Have you followed? Whatever else, it's not that you take on a male role. When you're asking for equality, I think in the introduction it was said, when you are asking for equality, you're not saying a woman is going to become like a man and work like a man. No, we are saying I'm a woman and I have these, I'm capable, I'm qualified, I can work and I can do a good job of what I'm doing. But I'm also a woman. And with a woman comes, if I plan to get married or have children, I have to go through that. But that doesn't mean you're not going to give me an equal job and an equal pay. What happens to the child, then how does one look after the child? And I say that facilities, when you say facilities, in a way it's true. If at the workplace or if what happens abroad, both men and women are working as hard. Majority of men, they have to work for survival. They know from that early on that the child has to put in a creche. So they have creches. I worry about creches. You must have good quality creches that are, you know, you make sure that the child is looked after properly, survived, fed properly. So they are creches. So we have that standard of creches either run by government or the private sector so that a man and woman can work equally. Or if there are today men who decide that I will not work, so the man stays at home, the man cares for the baby, the man does the cooking and the woman works. I know couples who do that also. So it's not that a woman changes her mind, it is that she is capable, she should get equal opportunity to get into a job, to rise in the job, whatever else happens, and she will manage whatever is happening. I think that's the way we have to look at it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any more questions?
Where it is flat, just apply a thin layer of it. Keep it like that.
Yes, I'm sure teachers have a lot of questions.
But expect that to happen. In the morning, the wash the face nicely with that Sanskrit again.
Hello, ma'am. This is Selina here.
Yeah.
I'm also a member of the Seroptimist. I want to ask Jyoti, ma'am, do you think that this COVID, because of the COVID pandemic, all of them being at home, does this give employers a better, change in their thoughts that even everybody doesn't have to come to work, even from work, and be flexible, like gives further, emphasis on work from home, and can that help more women get into the work?
Then we get into the second stage.
Somebody is talking. I mean, I can't hear.
Participants, please put your videos and audios off. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah. Work from home or flexible timing are definitely maybe supportive for women. But still, when the children are very small and the woman has to do work from home, she can't work. Even if she has to sit on the computer, if the children are there, how can she concentrate? That is a major thing. And also, maybe men are also working from home. In US, we see that both husband and wife adjust their duties, so that adjustment is also important, that both the people can adjust with each other and then do work from home. It's not very easy to say work from home. So many times in country like India, there is no internet. There are so many things are there. and the way speakers, how can they work from home? Nurses, how can they work from home? There are so many professions that work from home is not option at all. But it's a good thing. Only thing is there should be adjustments from all the parties.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, Serena ma'am, that was a very interesting question. The COVID-19 definitely has brought us all at the, at the same level. And of course, we are now all dependent on technology. But as Mapsekar ma'am very nicely said, for women, even today, it is work in home and work from home is our challenge. So unless we get help and, we teach our men folk to share in all the household chores, I don't think we'll be able to do justice to the work from home part of it. Yes, any more questions?
Yeah, madam, I have one question.
Yes.
My question is to Mapsekar madam.
Yes.
Madam, this is Assistant Professor Harsh Shukla from my Night Degree College. Ma'am, I have read one report that during COVID-19, domestic violence, the incidence of domestic violence has increased a lot.
Yes.
And so, what would you like to say about this?
Yeah, it is increased because both husband and wife, especially husbands, are there at home, and there's a lot of violence when day in and day out. And if the husbands are alcoholic, then there are more problems. Though the alcohol is banned, but still, men know how to bring that. So the violence is more fights are there, and that's why. And the counseling centers are closed. We could not go to counseling center unless only with the police cell and all. And nobody had, no police had no time. Suppose what is it?
So please don't use anything on the face. Just wash it. Can I add to this answer?
Yes, sir, Dr. Armida.
You know what? See, we work very closely with violence against women across the city. And yes, what you say is very true, that the incidence of violence has increased because of the confinement. Jyoti also said confinement in the house. Men cannot go out. They're there day and night. And of course, women are busy cooking and cleaning, but man has not very much to do. And liquor is another huge issue. But you know what, I want to add that we are working even in the COVID times, we are working very well at violence. We have in the slums, we were looking at the Ravi and all the slums, we have a lot of youth people who are volunteers. So there are volunteers for violence. The police stations are working, and they are the complaints can be given. The Nirbhaya Center at, that Sneha is running at KEM Hospital, that is running. So there are efforts being made to reach out to these women. And even for, this is for the, people in the slums, but for other people, it's not, remember, violence is not confined to the slums. Violence occurs at all socioeconomic levels. And we're not talking of physical violence, we're talking of mental, emotional violence that occurs when a man, woman are there in the house. And therefore, there are a long list of counseling lines for violence. This is available. So if you need counseling, you can call up. There are a list of counseling lines for violence.
Yes.
Sneha's counseling lines are also there. People are there in the slums that we work in. We have in touch with the police and also at the Nirbhaya Center. Unfortunately, I want to tell you at the Nirbhaya Center at KEM, one of the women came who of violence, and she was admitted. You admit the person, and she was admitted. Unfortunately, she had COVID, and she infected our counselor and also person in that. So there is a risk. But the center continues even in this time, and there is a need because incidence of violence is increasing.
I didn't talk about our own this thing, but about if you see the complaints where there are no counseling centers, where women had to get bitten and there is nobody, but they're talking on telephone. We are doing counseling on telephone also, and we rescued 3 girls in this period only. But it is a difficult time for everyone.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. I totally agree.
Thank you so much. So we have come to the end of the question and answer session. I now hand over the session to Dr. Anaya Markandeya.
Thank you so much, Lata Madam, for handling the session so wonderfully. Thank you, Mapsikar Madam. Thank you, Armida Madam. Before moving ahead for the formal vote of thanks, I would like to request Daphne Pillai Madam to share her thoughts on this topic. Madam, please.
Yeah, I'm totally in sync with whatever Dr. Armida Fernandez and Dr. Jyoti Mapsikar said about the mindsets, the traditions and practices that are prevalent, which act as barriers to women. And talking about maternity leave, I would also like to share that I was a victim of this practice or policy, whatever you call it, in the year 1981, when I was a professor in one of very prestigious colleges in South Mumbai. And, when they learned that I was pregnant, I was terminated from my services. And I remember the principal calling me to his office and telling me plainly, okay, because you're going to have a baby and you'll be requiring 3 months leave in the beginning of the term, and we cannot give you that leave. So if you want to come back, you come back in the second term in October. And then I thought to myself, why should I go back to that same college in October? I can apply to other colleges. So I was actually a victim of this practice in those days. I'm talking about the 80s. And coming back to what Dr. Armida said about leadership roles, yes, I do agree with her 100% that leaders shouldn't be confined only to those elitist people, those women who break the glass ceiling, as you call it. But we need leaders to rise from the masses. Anybody can be a leader if a woman is able to mobilize even 10 or 15 women to run a catering service, to provide meals, or even to run a cleaning service, or to run, making pickle or papad service, that person I would call a leader. She should be able to mobilize the people, encourage them, get them together and move forward. And I think the answer to women's empowerment ultimately would lie in encouraging women to become entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship, I think, is the answer, because most women suffer from whatever, Yvette said, imposter syndrome, that feeling that, of course, which is ingrained, that they, even if they're successful, they feel it has come by luck and they didn't deserve it. So this can be overcome, of course, by encouraging them to go into STEM subjects, that is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And what we do in Seroptimus International, we train them in skills. So, they become their own bosses. If you're an entrepreneur, you're your own boss and you don't have to go through all these biases. So on that note, I would like to end. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Daphne Madam, for your kind words. I now request Parveen Arif Madam to propose a formal vote of thanks. Parveen Madam, over to you.
Thank you, Anaya ma'am. Hi everyone, good afternoon. Thank you, Daphne ma'am and Seroptimus sister to grace this occasion. On behalf of Mahatma Education Society and Mahatma Naidu Degree College of Arts and Commerce, a warm welcome to our most valued guest speakers, worthy teachers, faculty members, as well as all participants connected here. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. On behalf of Mahatma Education Society, Mahatma Naidu Degree College of Arts and Commerce, and the entire fraternity of the institution, I, Parveen Arif, first of all, extend my most sincere thanks to Almighty. On my own behalf, I extend a very hearty vote of thanks to both the guest speakers, Dr. Armida ma'am and Jyoti Mapsikar ma'am, who spared time from their busiest schedule to grace this panel discussion and sharing their insights and opinion with us. A big thanks to the organizing committee, Principal Dr. Padma Rangan ma'am, Convener Anaya ma'am, Co-Convener Tushar sir, and Women Development Cell in charge, Dr. Lata Krishnan ma'am, for their efforts towards organizing such a lively panel discussion. I must mention my deepest sense of appreciation to all teaching, non-teaching staff of MNDC, because of whom we have made this event possible. I also extend thanks to our teaching technical staff members, Mr. Sanjay Singh, Anish Pillai, and Dipesh Jagdale for their enormous cooperation in organizing this event. Event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheel starts rolling weeks ago. It requires planning and bird's eye for details. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by this team of very motivated and dedicated colleagues of our college who know their job and are result oriented. I cannot thank everyone enough for their involvement and their willingness to take on the completion of tasks beyond their comfort zone. I bow my head in gratitude to all lovely participants whose feedbacks are worth noting. Once again, I want to state that we are all most grateful to all the speakers on this panel discussion. We thank you for being with us this morning. It is really a great pleasure. Thank you very much. मैम ये इस पूरे पैनल डिस्कशन में के लिए मैं 2 लाइन बोलना चाहूँगी. जो मैंने, जैसा कि लता मैडम ने बोला कि उन्होंने लॉकडाउन पीरियड में अपने घर में काम का बंटवारा किस तरह से किया, कि रोटी कमाना भी सिखाएं, रोटी बनाना भी सिखाएं, रोटी कमाना भी सिखाएं, रोटी बनाना भी सिखाएं, बेटा बेटी दोनों को. थैंक यू. ओवर टू अनया मैम.
Thank you so much, Parvi madam. Wonderful vote of thanks.
Thank you.
I request all of you to rise for the national anthem. Harsh Shukla sir, please play the national anthem.
गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता. पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा. विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उज्जल जयधि तरंगा. तव शुभ नामे जागे, तव शुभ आशीष मागे. गाहे तव जय गाथा. जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता. जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
Thank you, Shukla sir. Participants, feedback link will be shared on the WhatsApp group very soon. The certificates will be issued on the completion of feedback only. Thank you. Padma madam. You are not audible, madam. We have ended the session over here. Participants can leave. Thank you so much for your cooperation.